Welcome to the swamp. Let's go back to 2010. The Wii was at its peak and Monster Hunter Tri was doing something bold. In today's retro review, we're diving back into this classic title and rating it by the same standards that I use for other reviews. Let's get started. My name is Excalligator. I rate games based on many categories that would fit into most survival games, based on a 1 to 5 system. If a category does not apply, it will not affect the game's overall score. Now let us get started. Monster Hunter is my favorite franchise. Next to Zelda and Warcraft, I played this game in particular back in day one when it first released. I have a distinct memory of my friend bringing it to high school, and we hooked up the Wii to play on the large projector in our animation classroom. I had also played Tri-U in the following years, as well as the other generations of games, and the previous ones before Tri, but since then, I haven't played Tri. So I picked it back up recently and played through it for the first time in over a decade, and I'm here to share with you what I saw. Monster Hunter Tri is an action RPG released for the Nintendo Wii, where you take on the role of a hunter tasked with defending Moga Village from increasingly dangerous monsters. There is no traditional leveling system. Instead, your progress comes from gathering materials, crafting better weapons and armor, and learning each monster's behaviors. You'll track them, fight them, and slay massive creatures in handcrafted zones, gathering resources between hunts to prepare for the next one. It's all a loop that's about preparation, skill, and reward. And yes, this is the one that introduced underwater combat, for better or worse. Character creation, to be honest, it's bare bones. Even for its time, you get the basics, a few hairstyles, some skin tones, and some voice presets, and that's about it. You know, there's no face sculpting, no in-depth armor dyes. It definitely gives off that old-school Capcom charm, but compared to even earlier RPGs on other platforms, it feels very limited. So for that, I'm gonna have to give this a 2 out of 5. The game starts off with a cutscene of an earthquake and a first-person walk into the town as your hunter had just arrived from the guild to answer the worries of Moga Village. But you are still new to hunting and to this land, so the elder and his son will send you out into the world with bare-bones equipment to learn about gathering, crafting, and combat against weaker monsters. One thing is that you don't have access to all the weapons from the start. You only get a couple of weapons and a small amount of money, which is best used to buy a weapon that you do want if you don't want the sword and shield or greatsword. Now, while the tutorial itself is good at getting you set up into the game, I feel that it drags on way too long before you even get to your first large monster. So with that and the fact that you start off with only 2 weapons, I'm gonna have to bump this down to a 3 out of 5. The exploration in Tri is surprisingly well thought out. Each map is handcrafted, and more importantly, they make sense. The forest transitions into rivers, deserts into caves, and they feel believable and alive. You're not just running through arbitrary arenas. Each zone has its own rare resources that reward players for checking out every corner. The standout here is the underwater zones. Now, I know underwater combat is divisive in Monster Hunter communities, but here, I feel that it works. Chasing a Gobble or a Royal Ludroth through the aquatic caverns adds variety that other Monster Hunter games don't have. Movement is adapted with longer dodges and tailored to the monster's behaviors to fit the setting. The downside to this section is the Wii's hardware, as it shows its age. Every zone is broken up into loading screens, which is a standard for the older generations before World, but it hurts the immersion. And while Moga Woods lets you explore freely, most maps are still locked behind the Paw Pass quests with a 50-minute timer. So if you just want to gather, sometimes you're going to have to take those quests, and you don't even get to unlock them at the start. You have to wait sometimes a whole rank after reaching that zone before you can even do the Paw Pass quests. So until then, you're forced to do small monster kill quests or gather quests for you to go and gather what you actually need, and then just complete that quest. It's a bit clunky by today's standards, but overall most of these zones are my favorite of the franchise, especially Mogul Woods, also known as the Deserted Island in other games. It is by far the best map of any Monster Hunter game, and I hope one day to see it rebuilt with today's open world style of maps, so we could freely walk the woods, climb the mountains, and swim alongside the beach into the underwater caverns. I'm gonna rate this section a 4 out of 5 for how good the maps are, and only a point down for the loading screens and the limitations. Crafting in Monster Hunter Tri is where your efforts really start to show. After every hunt, you'll return with claws, scales, bones, and rare drops that fuel the gear to grind. The game features a huge variety of unique armor and weapon combinations, with each set reflecting the monsters it came from, both visually and stat-wise. That said, the weapon upgrade trees can be a bit vague. Unlike newer titles that show full branching paths, Tri asks you to experiment and hope you're on the right track. It's not game-breaking, but it does lead to some wasted materials and frustration if you're not careful. The decoration system is Tri's version of a skill gem system. It adds another layer to your customization. You can craft decorations to boost specific stats like sharpness, defense, or gathering. The downside is that they're locked to whatever armor that you socket them into, so you can't just remove and reuse them like in later entries. But still, you're not entirely at the mercy of RNG. While some charms and rare parts have random drop chances, most decorations can be crafted directly, giving you a sense of control over your build. It's a solid system, if a bit less forgiving than what modern players might expect. So for that, this whole section is gonna get a 4 out of 5. Monster Hunter Tri shines where it matters most, the monster design. Every creature is unique, from the hulking Baroth to the slippery Lagiacrus. These fights are more than just damage sponges. You're learning patterns, exploiting weaknesses, and trying not to get carded while your weapon locks onto you in a 6-second swinging animation. Speaking of which, combat feels deliberate. Every action matters. Every opening is earned. That weight is part of what makes the fight so rewarding. You need to actually prepare for each hunt. You can't just restock at your tent like modern games, and the elemental damage means a lot more when it comes to the damage numbers. While you can't physically see those numbers, you could definitely see it reflected by parts breaking, monster staggering, and so much more. The monsters have so much more armor too, which means you need to grind your ass off to get to green sharpness, or you're gonna bounce off your attacks by Hunter rank 3. Even then, the first green weapon you might get will have so little you're gonna have to sharpen often. Underwater combat needs to get its own special mention here. It doesn't just slap water physics on land-based fights. Movement and enemy attacks are actually redesigned for the environment. It's not perfect. There are definitely some janky hitboxes for both underwater and above water, but it's more fun than people might give it credit for. Still, animations can lock you in place, and there are moments where you feel like you're fighting the camera as much as you are the monster. You also have what I like to call Monster Hunter moments, where you can easily get stun locked, put into a corner, and left completely vulnerable to attacks which will easily kill you. I will say I fucking raged the most through this playthrough, because I noticed that if you are half health or lower, the chance of being stunned after an attack is like 80% or something. It's almost guaranteed, which that means I had to pretty much keep my health topped off if I could, or that was pretty much instant death. So for that, I'm gonna have to drop it a little bit down to a 4 out of 5 for the PvE section. The story in Monster Hunter Tri is subtle but satisfying. You're helping Moga Village grow stronger by fighting off increasingly powerful monsters. It's told through brief dialogues and key hunts, without ever really getting in the way of gameplay. It ramps up well towards the final battle with Ceadeus, or Ceadeus, however you pronounce it, the massive elder dragon lurking in the depths. There's a good build-up, and by the end, you get to face it. You feel the weight of everything you've done. That said, it does follow the classic Monster Hunter formula of big flagship monster shows up, you kill it, turns out it's not the real threat, and an even bigger monster appears that you get to hunt. If you've played other entries, it's predictable. Even in Worlds and Wilds, it will do this. I will say the only game to not really do it would be Monster Hunter 4, and of course 4U because it's the same game, with the Magalas. I'm gonna rate this section a 4 out of 5 for the fact that it's still a decent enough story for how much of it that you can get, and the environmental storytelling and the scope of the fight with Ciatis. Off the bat, Endgame is going to get a 5 out of 5. Here's where Tri truly shines and delivers, as well as other Monster Hunter games in general. Once you finish the main offline quests, the game opens up into high rank and G rank content in online mode. These are harder, more rewarding, and sometimes introduce new monsters that you'll never see in the single player mode. Even in low rank, you'll get post-story content with multi-monster fights. Now, I didn't get footage of high rank for this game as I had just joined the private server that will unlock Lock for me as of writing this review, so I'm still progressing there, but I've already played it before back in the day. So from event quests like the Phantom Urigan to large siege monsters like the Genmaron being my favorite fight so far of Tri, I could definitely say that yes, this gets a 5 out of 5 for the endgame. Despite being a Wii title, Monster Hunter Tri runs shockingly well. There is very little lag during hunts, and crashes are basically non-existent. Sure, some hitboxes can feel wonky and textures are muddy by today's standards, but the game is stable. That's both from coming from the Wii as well as a PC port that I am playing on. Well, not quite port, it is a emulation. Underwater visuals are also ambitious for the hardware, and while not perfect, they hold up better than you'd think. For a game with this much mechanical depth, it's impressive how few bugs you'll run into. So with that, I would rate this a 4.5 out of 5. My overall score for Monster Hunter Tri in this retro review is going to be a 4 out of 5. It's a title that tried something risky, underwater combat, and mostly stuck the landing. Its limitations are noticeable by today, especially in the character customization, loading maps, and other core gameplay loops, but it's still just as rewarding. For longtime fans, Tri is a nostalgic masterpiece, and for new players, it's a bit of a time capsule showing where the series took a bold leap forward. Whether you're here for the deep end monster design, or the satisfying end game, or just to see what the Wii was capable of, Tri is definitely worth remembering. Now, I didn't go deep into all the different Monster Hunter fights and all the different creatures and so on because I am planning a second video that will be showcased on my other channel, Excalligator Gaming. That's where I'm going to be going through the complete playthrough of the low rank or story mode of Monster Hunter Tri. I will be posting that video, and eventually when I do get to it, I will do the high rank and G rank stuff on the Lock private server. So until then, I will see you next time. And that is the end of this video. If you liked my review, please subscribe to this channel as I will be making more in-depth reviews of open-world, sandbox survival RPG games, including those that no one ever talks about from the deepest, darkest depths of Steam. Some games that even look like the muck at the bottom of my pond. If you have any suggestions for what game to do next, please comment below and like this video. Florida Gator Man out.